Hello, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk Football. My name is John Halpin alongside Chris Palmer. Chris Palmer, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. It's good to be back again for another episode. The draft is done. The questions that we had the last episode have officially been answered. So the breath of fresh air can happen.
Yes, so this is our draft recap episode. But before we get into the draft, there are two quick updates that we need to talk about. First, in regards to Aaron Rodgers is now officially a New York Jet. So, congratulations to Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets for having a very happy marriage. And we are looking forward to seeing what the Jets are going to look like and the Packers are going to look like in this new era. So, this is going to be very interesting. Quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, quick thoughts on that. Again, I hate the Aaron Rodgers to the Jets trade. I absolutely thought the Jets should have avoided him like the plague. But, it's going to get the Jets a lot of looks on prime time. But I'm a lot more interested to see the post Aaron Rodgers Green Bay Packers era. So I think that's going to be more interesting than what goes on with New York.
Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting watch. So keep your eye on Green Bay this season. So the second update we just wanted to briefly touch on is Lamar Jackson has signed a 5-year extension with the Ravens. He's signed, he's sealed, he's delivered, and myself as a Ravens fan, I could breathe a little easy knowing that Lamar is going to start for us next year.
Yeah, good on you guys for finally coming to a deal. And I got to give him a lot of respect because he did that deal on his own. He did not do it with his mother as his manager. So he made that deal with the Ravens on his own. So I give him the utmost respect for that. But now he needs to come out and show his worth for that contract again. So now in those years, you need to bring home a Super Bowl or it's really going to become problematic for all that money.
I believe he did have his mom representing him as his agent. So either way, the Jackson family, they are a happy bunch. Uh, Lamar is set for the next couple years. So let's see if he can bring a Super Bowl to Baltimore. So we will see in the coming years. So with that being said, let's move on to the NFL draft. Now, this is the 2023 draft, and it was an exciting draft in the first round, especially. Three quarterbacks went in the first round. Uh, 14 quarterbacks were drafted overall. This was an exciting time for a lot of great college teams. A lot of NFL teams are looking to get some great college players. So let's just start. What we're going to do, we're not going to go team by team, pick by pick. We'll talk about some picks here and there, but let's start by who won the draft. Who were the winners and losers of the NFL draft? Now, we're not going to be discussing the teams in their offseason totality, more so isolated specifically to the draft. So, Chris Palmer, let me ask you, in the AFC, who were the big winners of the NFL draft?
Well, when you look at the AFC, you have to go into it with remembering just how locked the AFC is. Each one pretty much moves together. Each division in the AFC, they move together. So if you want to look at strong drafts, you really look at the AFC North in particular because the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Bengals all had a really, really amazing draft. They really did. When it comes to overall grades, the Ravens had an A, the Steelers had an A plus, and the Bengals had an A. So they really, when it comes to those three, who won out of those three, I'm not trying to be biased. I feel the Steelers won because Omar Khan was amazing throughout the draft. But hats off to those three. Then in no particular order, the Jaguars had a really big and strong draft. With 13 drafted players with a grade of B plus. So I give that one a really strong because now they have a huge amount of rookies to look at.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. The Ravens and Steelers in particular, I am very impressed with. And to be a little objective here, I think the Steelers had a little bit more impressive of a draft than the Ravens did. The Steelers drafted a lot of positions of need that they that they really needed. Now the Ravens did as well, but the Steelers drafted ex- exactly who they needed to. They drafted Broderick Jones in the first round. You shore up an offensive tackle, you protect Kenny Pickett, you need offensive line help, and they got it, which was a huge step in the right direction for the Steelers. In the second round, they drafted Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. And now Joey Porter, his father played for the Steelers. He played as a linebacker, so it's a little different position. But the Steelers, I thought that was a great pick for the Steelers. He was just sitting there in the second round, and they decided, hey, look, come to Pittsburgh, man. We're going to train you exactly. So not only does he fulfill like a legacy pick, but it's a position of need because we talked about this last year how the cornerbacks for the Steelers they just were not getting it done. So now you have a young stud as a cornerback ready to develop under Mike Tomlin and that defense. I mean, granted, you also did pick up some good defensive acquisitions in free agency, but that's in free agency. We're talking specifically for the draft. You also did draft a second cornerback in Corey Trice Jr. in the seventh round. So you went very heavy on the cornerbacks. I see the Steelers drafted two cornerbacks, a linebacker, a D tackle, and an offensive guard. So two linemen, two cornerbacks, a D tackle, a tight end, and a linebacker. So you guys drafted a lot of positions of need
Yes,
very well. And I will say I'm really looking for big things out of Darnell Washington, that tight end. I expect big things out of him. He's the tight end out of Georgia. I expect big things out of him for this upcoming
big
year.
things from a big dude, 6'7", 250 pounds of just angry, mean dude. You can go back and look at his combine, and they showed comparisons of what tight ends were doing in like their run blocking schemes to a sled. He would take strides where people were doing chop steps. He is a born lineman with hands. Dude is absolutely enormous. I expect great things out of him with Pat Fryermuth as his other tight end to go next to. Hats off to Omar Khan, man. He drafted a team that you can almost expect everybody to be ready to play at any point with coaching, and we will be in the playoffs next year.
I can see that, and believe me, we're going to talk about the Steelers more as when the season gets a little closer. But I will say, I thought the Steelers were one of the biggest winners of this NFL draft. I will say, let me talk about the Ravens real quick. I thought we did very well in the draft, not as well as the Steelers, but we did draft positions of need, specifically at the wide receiver position with Zay Flowers in Boston College. Now, I had no idea when we drafted him. But then I looked at his highlights and I said, okay, I see exactly why we drafted him. He is that speedy wide receiver with some he breaks ankles. He absolutely breaks ankles. And so now pairing him with Rashad Bateman, OBJ, Nelson Aguilar, Devin Duvernay, Mark Andrews, and then we still have Lamar throwing the ball also as a as a playmaker, and we also have Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. I really like the way our offense is going to look this offseason, but it's all speculative. So we shall see how it's going to all play out when the time comes. But I got to say, I'm really happy that we drafted Zay Flowers. I thought he was good. Personally, I would have I wouldn't have been mad if we also drafted Jordan Addison out of USC, but the Vikings picked him up just behind us in the first round. So I thought Jordan Addison was a great wide receiver. He was another big body wide receiver, great outside the numbers, but he is going to do great things in Minnesota. Now, back to the Ravens real quick. I will say one other pickup that we got, and I was very happy for was Trent Simpson, linebacker out of Clemson. He looks like a stud. We put him there, paired him alongside Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen, and our rotating linebacker core looks to be absolutely stout. So I'm excited to see what how he's going to pair up in our defense this year. But I expect some good things out of the Ravens draft class this year.
Yeah, hats off to the Ravens GM and drafting scouts as well. Trenton Simpson, I really like. I talk about it all the time. I really like Clemson's defensive program. They really do come out with really strong defensive players. Trenton Simpson, I 100% agree with you, is going to be a stud. he is
Mhm.
going to become either a number one or a number two linebacker within this season. So either Roquan Smith or the other linebacker that you have may wind up taking a seat, and it's going to come into play and it's going to come into effect as to the chemistry of the team if they're willing to do that. So I would hope that the coaching could hold the discipline of your veterans to, watch a young aspiring player come in and play. And I hope he comes in and he earns that position. And I hope that doesn't change anything amongst that team because you guys are staring at a deep playoff run on paper.
Oh yeah, and we shall see how it's all going to come together in the season. But I want to move on to some other teams that I thought drafted very well this year. I think the two quarterbacks that went in the first round in the AFC, C.J. Stroud for the Texans and Anthony Richardson for the Colts, I thought were great picks by those organizations. C.J. Stroud was personally my favorite quarterback going into this draft. He absolutely impressed the hell out of me in that semifinals game against Georgia on New Year's Eve. That was probably the best college game I've ever seen in my life. That was an incredible college game, and CJ Stroud played his absolute ass off. And I think for him to go to the Texans, a team that is embracing the rebuild, I thought that was a very smart move on the Texans' part. Great pick, great pick. For the Colts, I thought it was the smart pick to take Anthony Richardson. Now, the Colts had been rotating quarterbacks since Andrew Luck had retired. So it was about damn time that they finally drafted a quarterback that they can develop. And I thought that was a great pickup by the Colts.
Yep, again, I 100% agree with you. Personally, I loved Anthony Richardson coming out of college, but his decision making was a little on the subpar level, so he was on he was kind of going to be doubted from going into this draft. I loved Anthony Richardson, but CJ Stroud was so on a different level. He took all the media. So CJ Stroud is going to do great. He's going to be starter ready out the jump. Texas is really great for picking up CJ Stroud. They had a bunch of picks and they have a bunch of young guys to go in with him. Um, one of the picks that I like from the Texans though was Will Anderson, the second first round pick that they got. They have a
Yeah, they
very
drafted C.J.
strong edge
Stroud and
rush.
then Will Anderson.
This is why I preach. I said it last year. You gotta hold your first round picks tight to the chest because this is when you come around and you start seeing teams that have more than one first round pick and they have studs with each of those picks coming out of college. And that you got to think of all these teams that have more than one first round pick, where those secondary first round picks could have been and where those players could have gone and how much they could have helped those other teams.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I thought Will Anderson was a great pickup for the Texans, but we'll see exactly how they're going to play out later this year. If Will Anderson performs as he is expected to out of college, then he is going to be an impactful player from the get-go. And so I'm really excited to see how the Texans are going to be looking under new head coach D'Amico Ryan. I think the Texans have a very bright future ahead of them, but for the time being, it's Jacksonville's division. But I thought both drafts were very successful drafts, both respectively for the Colts and the Texans. Um, so, any other big winners in the AFC?
I wouldn't consider it a big win, but they definitely drafted smart with the little bit of drafts that they had. The Titans, they got graded an A minus. But when I was looking at their draft card, the one thing that I really noticed was that they are fully embracing a rebuild in their offensive scheme. And now, hear me out. Their first pick was an offensive guard. Their second pick was a quarterback, Will Levis. Third pick was a running back, and their fourth pick was a tight end. They are absolutely getting ready to move on and face a new future through the young talent. Because right after that, they picked up a wide receiver and another offensive tackle. So expect a different Titans roster at some point in the very, very near future.
Oh yeah, the you're absolutely right. That I'm looking at it right here, and the Titans went all offense for this draft. They know that like, hey, look, we are not good on offenses. Like we need some young blood in that system, and I think that their first round pick, Peter Skoranek, I thought was a very smart pick. He was a great tackle out of Northwestern. So if you're going to you have to protect your quarterback, but you also need to create some running lanes for Derrick Henry. Now this is where it gets interesting. They drafted Will Levis in the second round, quarterback out of Kentucky. Now Will Levis was expected to be a first round draft pick. He fell to the second round, to the second pick of the second round, and it was speculative that he could have been drafted first overall, but I don't think so. He just seems like another quarterback with a big arm, but not. I don't think he's just there at the NFL. He's NFL ready just yet. But he's under Mike Vrabel. Who knows? Maybe Mike Vrabel can coach him up. But now the Titans have looked. They have two young quarterbacks. They have Malik Willis from last year's draft, and they have Will Levis from this year's draft. So how the Titans can really choose which direction they want to go in. Obviously, they still have Derrick Henry, so they're still going to be running the ball a lot. But they really looked and said, "Look, our offense needs to improve."
Yeah, 100%. They completely embrace that their offense needs to improve. I'm actually really upset that they're not going in with Malik Willis, and that comes from Mike Vrabel being such a traditional coach. He wants someone who's going to stand back in the pocket and pass the ball or throw it away, and Malik Willis is a scrambling, running quarterback. And Mike Vrabel said it last year. He goes, "I just wish he would stand in the pocket more and he would run less." So, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not Malik Willis's game, and it's clearly not going to fit. So I hope Malik Willis will find a team that fits his scheme.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope he gets a chance to start somewhere. He seems like a good quarterback, but we shall see this upcoming season. So let's move on to the NFC. So Chris Palmer, let me ask you, who are some of the big winners of the 2023 draft in the NFC?
You see, it's interesting to me. One of the biggest winners of the NFC was the Detroit Lions. I think they had one of the best drafts throughout between AFC and NFC. I think they drafted great,
Hmm.
and they got about an A minus to an A grade as well. Got to tell you, the pickup of Jamar Gibbs and Jack Campbell, and again, a double first round 1-2 knockout punch is unfreaking believable for them. I love both of those draft picks. I think the Lions really, they almost clean swept the NFC when it comes to winning the draft.
Hmm.
Not many teams drafted better in the NFC than the Lions.
Yeah, I gotta say, one thing that I noticed in the draft, I first off, I agree with you 100%. I think the Lions were like the big winners in the NFC, along with the Eagles. Those were the two big teams that drafted exceptionally well. Um, I will say though, one thing I like about the draft is what positions do teams draft? Because understanding why teams draft specific positions lets you understand that they evaluated how they were last season and say, look, this is the position that we need to improve upon. And I look at the Detroit Lions, and they drafted pretty much everywhere across the board, but great players. Jamari Gibbs at running back out of Alabama. They got two Alabama players. They got Jamari Gibbs and Brian Branch, cornerback out of Alabama. I thought that was a great pickup too. Alabama is one of those college teams that they just churn NFL talent year in and year out. There are just so much great talent that comes out of Alabama and Nick Saban because they're just every player from every position. They are just ready to go. I thought Jack Campbell out of Iowa and Sam Laporta, the tight end out of Iowa, two Iowa players,
Tight
two
end.
Alabama
Yep.
players. You can really see where the scouting was for the Detroit Lions. They know where they liked. We're like, hey, we're going to draft these players from these schools because this school looks great and these players look NFL ready. Um, I agree with you. The Lions were absolutely big winners, and as well as the Eagles. Are we going to start calling them the Philadelphia Bulldogs because they just love players from Georgia, man? They just absolutely love their players from Georgia.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. They have 6 active players from Georgia Bulldogs, and believe it or not, all 6 of them have played together because in that draft, they traded for DeAndre Swift, the running back from Detroit.
Oh, that's right.
So having 6 active Georgia Bulldogs, and one of which being the silent assassin. Wait, no, sorry, he went to the Rams. My apologies. Is Stenson Bennett? Not he didn't go to the Eagles. I'm sorry, but Jalen Carter going to the Eagles to fill that D tackle spot. I love it.
I gotta say, one
I absolutely love it.
for those who don't watch college, Georgia has actually won the last 2 national championships. It's equivalent to the Super Bowls in NFL standards, but Georgia is basically back-to-back winners of the national championship, and they did so this past year in dominating fashion against TCU. This was an absolute. Was it TCU or was it? I forget who it
Yeah,
was.
no, it was TCU, and they had no business being on the field.
It was TCU. Okay, yeah. I was gonna say I also took notes that there were actually um, what was it? 10 Georgia players drafted in this draft alone. 10 out of 12 eligible players. So Georgia is just churning out talent. Also, Alabama had 10 players, 10 out of 13 players drafted, 9 players from Michigan. So there's a lot of big talent coming out of these big schools right now. As I mentioned before, 14 quarterbacks were drafted in this, and also 14 tight ends were drafted in this draft. So there's a lot of big
I
talent
also
out there.
saw that I think it was 32 defensive backs were drafted.
Oh, I believe that, man. This was a
It
very
was like
defensive
32
heavy
defensive
draft.
backs and 30 wide receivers.
Yep. Hey man,
It was
and that's
heavy,
great too
heavy.
because as much as the wide receivers are getting talented and getting great, the defensive backs are there with them. They're getting just as talented and just as great because they're the ones defending them. So it's great to see. I do want to call out one other winner, and that is specifically who you mentioned before, the Los Angeles Rams. I thought them drafting Stetson Bennett was such a clutch pickup that no one's talking about it because Stetson Bennett looks like an NFL ready quarterback, and he fell to the 4th round of the draft. No one considered him for the first round, and I thought it was such a smart pickup by the Los Angeles Rams because Matt Stafford, as great as he is, and I'm a big Matt Stafford fan, he's not healthy, and he's on the back end of his career. He's only got 1 to 2 years max left on his deal, and so when he's up, it's Stetson Bennett's time. And I think that when his time is called upon, he is going to do great things for the Los Angeles Rams. I thought that was a clutch pickup for the Rams.
Yep, I agree with you 100%. I slipped when it came to talking about Georgia with Stenson Bennett, but the Rams are another team that drafted for a very up and coming change in the offensive scheme. Their first pick was a guard, and then they slipped all the way to the 4th round, picked up Stenson Bennett, which I don't understand how he made it that far. I really don't. This guy is ready to win Super Bowls. He really is. He was eligible after his first year of college. He decided to stay for 3 extra years and just gain experience playing at the highest level that he could. He is ready for the NFL. He's ready to win Super Bowls. And I'm right there with you. I love Matt Stafford, but with the spinal cord injury of last season, I don't expect him to see a full season this year. If Stenson Bennett winds up being the number 2 in Los Angeles, he will wind up on the field before the season is over. But with that being said, they also decided they had again a slew of picks. They had 2 third-round picks. They had one, two, three, 4 5th-round picks and 4 7th-round picks. So they literally could just pick from literally whoever they wanted because they just had the mass. So now they can just do everything almost by committee if they really wanted to. So they have so much fat trimming that they could do with all of their picks. This is really, really a good turnaround draft for the Rams compared to what last season was.
What's ironic is because the Rams, they really sold a lot of their draft stock over the years to get these high caliber players like Jalen Ramsey, Matt Stafford, et cetera, et cetera. But their motto was "fuck them picks." But it's ironic because they actually drafted the most picks out of anyone this entire draft. They had 14 selections, and that is without having a first round draft pick. So they, even though the Rams were pretty quiet this draft, they made some very good moves. I expect good things out of the Rams this year. I'm looking at it too. They have some good players. Just right off the top of the head, they have Byron Young, outside linebacker out of Tennessee, Kobe Turner out of Wake Forest in the third round. Like you said before, Stetson Bennett, which is a very clutch pickup. And they have Warren McClendon Jr., offensive
Warren
tackle out
McClendon,
of, guess where?
yes,
Georgia.
yes. What's better than to move on with a new quarterback than to have his own safety net at blindside guard from college to come with him?
Yep. I thought the Rams, they were another big winners in this draft, and I don't think a lot of people talk about it too much. Before we move on, I just do want to give a shout out to the Seattle Seahawks. I thought they drafted very well as well. Um, Devin Witherspoon, cornerback out of Illinois, great pickup in the first round, and also Jackson Smith Najigba, wide receiver out of Ohio State, another great pickup. And I think that those two guys are going. Seattle has a lot of young talent, both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Seattle looks nasty.
Yeah, I'm gonna slip in one little name there too because I feel like he's gonna be starter ready. Jarek Reed the second, the safety that they
Mhm.
decided that they stole in the sixth round. He is a sleeping giant. I want you to know that he is freaking absolutely unbelievable. So I'm very happy that he got with the Seahawks, especially with Bobby Wagner's leadership this year. So that's going to be a real quick turn into maturity with having Bobby Wagner to learn from.
Oh, absolutely. And you pair him up with Quandre Diggs in the backfield, that's going to be absolutely nasty. So I'm excited for Seattle. The Lions, the Eagles, and the Rams, they have bright futures ahead of them. So let's move on to even though there were some winners, let's talk about some of the losers of this draft. So let's start. Chris Palmer, who do you think in the AFC were some of the big losers in the draft who missed out on a lot of the talent?
You see, the obvious one is the Dolphins, but that's because of everything that happened with them. So led them to losing draft picks. Um, they only had four picks: one in the second, one in the third, a sixth, and a seventh. So they had no chance to even look at the talent this year, and I think that's going to follow through for next year too. I believe the trouble they got to bled in for is going to bleed for the next couple of years. So I feel like there's really no one. It's like a landslide loss for them in the AFC. Like they just were able to draft no one.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's not only the tampering from this past offseason or last offseason that they got in trouble for, but it's also the deal with Tyreek Hill. They also got rid of a lot of their draft capital in service to get Tyreek Hill. So the the Dolphins really wanted to acquire already established talent at the cost of the picks. Now, is that detrimental to the team? Not necessarily, because we know Tyreek Hill is still one of the best wide receivers in the league. And they also just acquired Jalen Ramsey this offseason as well. So it's not to the detriment of the Dolphins, but like you said, they only picked up four players. And man, I don't know. I'm looking at the picks that they had, and I feel like they could have really picked up a lot of big talent. I thought, what was it? Devin Akane, running back from Texas A&M. I thought he was a good pickup too because I think the Dolphins need help in the running game, especially. But Oh man, they picked up a wide receiver, Elijah Higgins from Stanford, and I doubt he's going to see the field because you still got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill just being absolute beasts in the receiving game. So I thought the
Yeah,
Dolphins were great
Elijah
moves.
Higgins' saving grace is that he's secondaries as a tight end. So that's a very interesting combination. That those are the two positions that he picks. So that could be his saving grace where he could see a little bit of playing time.
Possibly. I will say another team that I personally thought was a big loser in this draft was the Denver Broncos. Now, again, there were another team that did not that sacrificed their picks in order to acquire Russell Wilson from last year. So Seattle actually got those two first round draft picks. They got that fifth overall pick of Devin Witherspoon in courtesy of the Denver Broncos. So the Denver Broncos didn't draft until the second round. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, they picked a little bit better than I thought they did, but even still, it's like they only had five total picks. I thought they would have done a little bit more in this draft to kind of really acquire some good talent, but it seems that they did a lot of their work through free agency this year, and I don't blame them. They picked up a lot of great talent in free agency, but in regards to this draft to really boost their team with some young talent, I think they really missed a big opportunity in this draft.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Broncos as well. Again, it's just going back to the comment I made earlier. It's just you got to hang on to your first round picks, especially if they're early. If you get anything that could be a lotto pick, 1 through 10, you cannot give it up. You cannot give it up. That's my one thing that I always feel in people, and it's just the league just finds first round draft picks to be expendable, and they shouldn't.
I think you know what it is. It depends on who it's for. Now, let's be honest. The Broncos did not think that when they got Russell Wilson that their pick the following year would be the fifth round pick. They thought they would be good, and we all thought that they would be good. But in all
Right.
reality, they were not. And I think that Seattle, look in hindsight, looking back on that trade, Seattle turns out to be the big winners of that trade because now they have a plethora of young talent around them, both offensively and defensively. And man, I really like how Seattle's looking this upcoming year. I want to see Geno Smith do it again because he really impressed me last year. I want to see Geno do it again, and now they have. Think of this receiving core. You have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith Najigba. Then you also have Kenneth Walker out of running back, but they also have what was it? What's his name? Zach. Going to mispronounce his name, and I apologize. Zach Charbonnet, running back out of UCLA, who I read reports that he's actually going to compete against Kenneth Walker for the starting job. So that is going to be an impressive uh, tandem for Seattle. I will say, in regards to the Denver Broncos, I hope that their free agent acquisitions do work out for them. But again, they missed out on a lot of young talent that they definitely could have needed in this draft.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like the big pattern in this one was there was a lot of teams that took advantage to get to gain draft capital, and those who are really feel they shot themselves in the foot getting rid of the capital they had for star players that either fell up short or didn't fall up short, like in terms of Tyreek Hill, because Tyreek Hill is Tyreek Hill. But it's just you hurt yourselves in an off the field situation, and the picks that you sent over to gain him hurt you as a combination.
Yeah, I think you know what it is those who came to play came to play. Those teams that did not come to play, they didn't come to play. And so we're gonna see how it turns out later on. I will say I do want to jump to the NFC. Um, I do want to say one particular draft loser that I thought did not do as well as I expected was the San Francisco 49ers. I looked at their draft. They did not have a draft pick until the third round of the draft. That's not until like late Friday, like or Saturday. That's like they did not draft. And you know what it is? It's not so much that they didn't draft in the first or second round because you could still get great college players in later in the draft. There's no denying that. But what gets me is that although San Francisco had the number one defense last year, they fantastic defense. They did draft defense, and that's great. But I would have thought that they would have drafted positions that they needed in depth in the offense that they run, specifically at running back. The fact that they did not draft a running back, I thought was a very big missed opportunity by the San Francisco 49ers because Kyle Shanahan has proven that he can just take running backs and they become studs. And it seems like they just missed an opportunity to really acquire a good running back talent because they seem to be getting hurt. Much like their quarterbacks, they just get hurt. And that's not the fault of the 49ers, but it's like you need more offensive depth. And I thought that was a big missed opportunity for the 49ers.
Yep, I can't help but agree with you that the 49ers were another like runaway loss, but that's again because of not having early round picks. And I agree with you, you can find really good talent, but when it comes to drafts, the first two rounds is where you're going to find the the players that are ready to start out of the gate. And that's where it becomes important because if you have people that your entire draft board is full of people who need 2 years or more worth of development, you're not going anywhere this year. You're not making any major improvements, any minor improvements really with the people that you just picked up. So you really need to take advantage of your early on, even in the third round. Like you can still find people who are starter ready, which why their saving grace to me was having 3 third round picks. So they were. It's just to me they kind of burned one while with drafting a kicker. You could have really dug deep and found a diamond in the rough, possibly offensive guard. You could have found a diamond in the rough running back, like you said. You could have found another diamond in the rough potential edge rush, but you went and you spent it on a kicker. And I understand that there's a need for kicker, but most special teams, punters, kickers, what have you, they get picked up in undrafted free agents. So to burn a pick like that, it really was just not smart to me. So they really didn't draft smart. They drafted what they had and what they felt they needed to do. They didn't need to draft a kicker. But having multiple picks in the same round, again, having 3 7th round, going with a tight end, a wide receiver, and then Jalen Graham's position defeats me at the moment. Um, I like the idea of having multiple picks in the same round, but I don't like the idea of not having early round talent. That's the only thing that saved them.
Yeah, one thing I will say though, me personally, I don't mind them drafting a kicker. I think kickers again are one of the most underutilized and undervalued positions in the league. I don't mind them drafting a kicker, but in all reality, I don't think that it if they were dead set on drafting Jake Moody, yeah, you get Jake Moody, their kicker, but he probably would have stayed in the draft until probably the fifth or sixth round. I think you utilize that third round pick to get a good running back. It's somewhere out there. I know a lot of teams, man. They again, it's the depth, and that's one thing that I think was a big missed opportunity for. I don't fault them for drafting a kicker. I only fault them for drafting it so high in comparison to their picks because they did not have that first or second round. So we shall see how the 49ers are going to look, but it looks like the NFC West got really shaken up in this draft. So between the Seahawks, the 49ers, and the Rams, this draft looks to be impactful in the NFC West.
Yeah, 100%. The NFC West looks absolutely packed. Um, but I feel like this is good. The NFC West is just going to run through the Rams. It's just you're going to have to get through LA. and they are ahead by a landslide because of just how many draft picks they have. They can literally do everything by committee, trim fat as they need to go, and keep players on their roster as long as they need.
Well, I hope the Rams are in good contention for this upcoming year, but we shall see. It's all speculative at this point. Everyone's in everyone's mind, everyone's the winner in the draft, but we won't know until week 1 of the regular season. So, with that being said, that is our NFL draft recap. We are recording this just days before the NFL schedule is released. So, shortly after the release of the NFL schedule, we will come back to you and talk about some upcoming games, when to look forward to some games. So be ready for our next episode in regards to that. But Chris Palmer, do you have any final remarks before we sign off?
Um, Nothing except this draft was a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to the schedule being released. There's rumors that it's going to be a Jets Giants opening night, so we'll have to see if that is confirmed or if there's going to be something else. But all I know is we are going to see a lot of green in prime time this year.
Oh yeah, between the Eagles and the Jets, we're going to be seeing a lot of green this year. But I would not doubt Aaron Rodgers getting that primetime slot for Week 1. So, with that being said, we want to thank you all for joining in on our draft special. We had a lot of fun recording this. We had a lot of fun taking notes on all these college players in the draft. We look forward to you joining us sometime soon. Well, don't worry, we'll be posting our upcoming schedule soon. But until then, if you enjoy this video, be sure to give us a like, comment, subscribe, and we'll be back next time. Until then, we'll catch you all later.
Thanks, guys.